addressing Queen Anne and what really happened during the transatlantic slave trade. A lot of speculations that have been made about her, and we're going to deal with it. We're going to deal with it directly, with who she was, what she stood for, even the statement about slavery. From an archaeologist here, it says, subsequently to the Battle of Blenheim, a deputation of noblemen from the west of England attended at court to congratulate Queen Anne on the victory which had been achieved by the British Army. So she fought in this war, the Battle of Blenheim. We're going to look at this real quick because this is Queen Anne's battle. That was her battle, right? This is a track. Okay, now this is from London. Okay, and I want you guys to see this here because this is a track of different transactions that were made and commentary on those transactions throughout the kings. So these are all the transactions and money, the things that they spent that was made throughout the Stuart kings and even the queens, as Queen Anne was a queen. Check this out. It says, had this system, now this bank holders of the Stuarts, had this system always prevailed, we should not now be paying interest on money borrowed to fight the Battle of Blenheim. Now this is the same battle that Queen Anne fought. Now this banker is complaining that they fought the battle in the first place. Now check out what the battle was for, what a lot of people don't know. For the emancipation of Negroes. If anyone's familiar with what emancipation means, it means the freeing of the Negroes, causing them to be, a lot of times in those times they called it being marooned. You ever notice how around Queen Anne's time there was a whole lot of maroons? This puts a whole nother spin on everything. Now we're going to read Queen Anne's speech. This is where people attested, oh, she was a slaveholder. Check this out. But the part which we have borne in the prosecutions of this war, entitling us to some distinction in terms of peace, I have insisted and obtained that the asinto or contract for furnishing the Spanish West Indies with Negroes in shall be made with us for the term of 30 years in the same manner as it hath been enjoyed by the French for 10 years past. Now notice she never mentioned slaves, but she wanted to buy or get herself some Negroes from the French. So it was enjoyed by the French. She wants to have those Negroes to herself. Now I want y'all to think about this. If her job, which in her track, she fought the war. This is before, during the war. Now, again, the eyewitnesses, the actual people who handled Queen Anne's bank account, her tracks, her transactions, they said she was trying to free the Negroes. She was living at the same time. Remember that king that was they were called a bastard? That wasn't an actual king. That same king was ruling in the time of Queen Anne, who had a bunch of slaves. How do you emancipate the Negroes from someone who owns slaves? You buy them back. They loved them because they employed them and they freed them. They made sure they had work and they would free them. He says what a lot of them were supposed to do, and a lot of them were doing. They bought them back. That's the only way she could have emancipated the Negro, is getting them back from the people who had the Negroes. And I hope that's clear. I mean, that's common sense, that in order to buy Negroes from someone who owns slaves, you have to buy them from them. This is what she was trying to do. Now we're going to go to the laws. So these are the laws that were establishing in Queen Anne's time. This is a law track. It says Queen Anne's instruction to Lord Cornbury were most minute as to the conversion of Indians and Negroes, the establishment of churches and ministers, regulation of marriages, and a vast number of religious subjects. But in the same document, B is enjoined to give special encouragement to merchants and especially to our Royal African Company of England, taking care that no trading be done with Africa except through this company, and rendering a yearly account of the number of Negroes that the province was supplied. Right? Now remember, we just read she was trying to supply Negroes. I'm gonna prove the point very clear. She wanted to be supplied with Negroes herself. Let's keep reading. This literally is the bullseye right here. With and at what rates? Volumes have been written on the suppression of slavery and the slave trade. And there's a lot of other tracts and laws you guys can even look up yourself, where she is buying slaves to free them. She was actually a righteous queen. She was actually trying to free the Negroes. This is a historian, and it says here, from the throne of Mongol, we're reading from this 1701, and we're reading here something very important that Queen Anne actually did. So I'm showing y'all that she not only wanted to suppress the slavery of the Negroes, but she also respected them. I'm going to show y'all something. Again, we're reading from 1701. This is when Queen Anne was alive. Now it says here in the 1700s, and again in 1709, the English court sent to West Africa a crown. I remember Queen Anne was on the throne at this time. It sent to West Africa a crown that cost 30 pounds for the young King Hotham in Ida. Now, this is from this historian. Now, here's what's so important. Here's what's so crucial about this. Now, King Hotham, if we read this here, is he was termed King of Judah, the last ruler of the kingdom of Ida before it was captured by the forces of Dahomey in 1727. Now we're reading this from the museum, right? The Science Museum. That's the science source. Now, some people may think, well, Judah is just a French translation, right? Does it really mean Judah as in Judah? Okay. Now we're going to read this right here. This is a map, the Emmanuel Bowen in 1694. Now he's English, and on the slave coast there it says Judah, Kingdom of Judah. A lot of people were familiar with this map. Now we're going to read this here from this guy right here, born 1675. These are all cartographers, and the same place, he also calls the same place Judah. Before it was Kingdom of Judah, then he calls it Judah. Now in France, this means of Judah. Now people may say, oh, that's just what they did. Are there really Jews there? Does Judah really mean Judah? Well, let's get somebody who was living around the same time these maps were made, who went into this same part. Because if we look here at this map right here that we're looking at, right? It says Guinea. You see that? Guinea. So the kingdom of Judah is right on Guinea. You guys see that? So let's see about someone who went to Guinea. Same place where the kingdom of Judah map location is at. Now this is from John Ogilvie, born in the 1600s. Now we're going to read from the top. It says, forts and fortresses in dispersed places on the coast of Guinea to secure and many confirm their trade. Many Jews also are scattered over this region. and some natives boasting, because people could say, oh, they called them Jews, but the natives boasting themselves of Abraham's seed. We just read that in Wida, in the same place that's called Kingdom of Judah, somebody actually went there, and the people in the Kingdom of Judah told them, yeah, we're Jews. We're the descendants of Abraham. And the traveler himself recognized them to be Jews. So when we read the Kingdom of Judah, that's talking about Jews. So when in the reign of Queen Anne, they delivered that man the crown. They did that. Why? Because real recognize real. It's her people. And we also find out here that in this war, Queen Anne had a lot of free Negroes fighting in the war. Now we're going to talk about the connection with Queen Anne and the pirates and Blackbeard. So this is Blackbeard, the pirate, and then we're looking at archaeological fragments that were taken and that were found in the ships, and we're going to observing from the shipwreck of the Blackbeard's flagship. Okay, so we're reading from this archaeologist and a maritime archaeologist at that, and he says Blackbeard, whose name was Edward Tech, had commanded a privateer during Queen Anne's war before turning to piracy. Alright, so he fought in Queen Anne's war. And it says here that Queen Anne's Revenge began life as La Concorde, a French slave ship owned by a merchant. Alright, so this is the ship that he got. And then we read from archaeology here that Blackbeard captured a slave ship and made it into a pirate ship. Now we're going to look at an archaeological and historical account that happened with Blackbeard and what he was doing and how he was interacting with the people. Now it says, which he described as a brigantine with 14 Negroes aboard. Another account refers to a brigantine, and these are the manuscripts that they found within the boat, from Angola with 86 Negroes, which is met by the pirates. They took for her 13 of their best Negroes. She comes from Bristol. It sounds as if Blackbeard could ask for volunteers from among the terrified slaves. So he took the ship, and then he told the slaves there and asked them, the Negro slaves, if they wanted to be pirates, and chose the fittest of them to reinforce his pirate band. No doubt he did the same after capturing the 455 slaves on board the Concorde back in November, and given the same percentage of recruits, the French slaver could not have furnished as many as 70 volunteers for Blackbeard's crew. It is little wonder that when these men saw friendly black faces among the crew, that liberated them. So he liberated those slaves, and they felt more comfortable also because Blackbeard's crew were black themselves, as we just read. And then we see here that the slave ship, Adacha's ship, is called Queen Anne's Revenge. This is another take from a paper that was found in the ship. And then it also says here from the same archaeologist, Blackbeard with his new ship, now named Queen Anne's Revenge. So he named it Queen Anne's Revenge. Now we can finally connect the dots because it's been a long time coming, trying to find out why did he name his ship Queen Anne. Well, Queen Anne was looking to free the slaves, and he was a pirate who also freed the slaves. Queen Anne died trying to achieve her mission, and he made a ship, a pirate ship, from a slave ship, named it Queen Anne's Revenge. Revenge on who? Revenge on the slavery. Now this is Captain Charles Johnson, born in 1680. And it says here in his book, This would be an eyewitness account. The next day they took another vessel out, and the two pinks going in, and a brigantine with Negroes in the face of the town, which put the inhabitants into a sad flight, being in no condition to help themselves. Tack, alias Blackbeard, sent Richard along with Mr. Mark, one of the prisoners, to demand a chest of medicine of the governor, several of his men being sick aboard, threatening otherwise to burn the ships and destroy all the prisoners. Why? Because he wanted to help the Negroes and also make them pirates as well. Among whom was Mr. Samuel Ragg, one of his council. Although this was very much against the inhabitants, yet they were forced to comply with it to save their lives of the many souls had in his custody. So sending him a chest worth about 300 or 400 pounds. If you read this account, it's saying they captured the ship, black people there, and they told them that if you don't give us the medicine for these sick Negroes, we're going to burn the ship. Alright, and he also says here, the same source, accordingly, he ran aground as if it had been by accident, and calling Israel hands to his assistance, he ran the sloop ashore near the other, and so they were both lost. This done, Blackbeard goes into the Revenge and maroons 17 men upon them. So we're seeing here that he started marooning people. You see the connection with Queen Anne and the Maroons. We're going to check out an even earlier source of the Maroons, because we see that Blackbeard was marooning people. Queen Anne was marooning people, come to find out. Let's see about King Charles II. Edward D. O'Delly was made military governor of Jamaica, and following the restoration of Charles II in England of 1660. Now we're going to read about some details here, and we're going to show you how Negroes followed the Stuart crown. It says, in 1655, the British conquered much of Jamaica, forcing the Spanish to flee to the northern coast rather than becoming slaves to new masters. Vast numbers of Spanish slaves took this opportunity to join the Maroons in the hill country. Now, you know, a lot of 1655, the Dutch took over and were ruling at the time, and then King Charles II takes the crown back temporarily in 1660. At first, the Negroes weren't dealing with the British. Then, all of a sudden, within 5 years, the British governor Edward O'Delly, the one we just read about, who King Charles II appointed, built an alliance with the Maroons, who quickly routed the Spaniards from their remaining settlements by 1660. Now, it's a coincidence that 1660 is when King Charles II came back to the throne. And that's also when the Maroons decided to join the British. They followed the crown. The last Spanish ruler had fled for Cuba for 3 years. The Maroon leader, Lubalo, served the British governor as a colonel. They served the crown, but the crown was short-lived. The Dutch took over, and this is why, if you keep it on reading here, it speaks about how the Negroes left the British crown because they were following the Stuart crown. It's just the British crown kept on alternating between the Dutch and the British, or the Jacobites. So this is one of the origins of the Maroons. One of King Charles II men marooned many people. Now we're going to get a quote from King Charles. This is nps.gov. It says, in 1693, King Charles II issued the first official position on the runaways, giving liberty to all, the men as well as the women, so that by their example and by my liberty, others will do the same. So that's what he was about. So now we're going to be reading laws in Elizabethtown, Lexington. And this is approved by the Board of Directors. The said province may be more speedily promoted. Some have thought to see in these grants an unworthy readiness to serve the interests of the Duke of York, President of the Royal African Company, that the desire of the Lords proprietors was anything different from that stated, namely the rapid development of the province. I have found no evidence to prove to what extent slaves were actually imported, even is uncertain. Slaves not being actually imported is what this law book is stating. There's no evidence that it happened in this particular time. It's uncertain. The earliest legislation, now remember, Duke of York is King James II, is what we're reading about. So we're about to read a quote from him. In New Jersey, bearing on the subject of slavery, is a provision in 1668 that if any man shall willfully or forcibly steal away any mankind, he shall be put to death. Yeah. King Charles said what he said, did what he did with the Maroons, and King James II said what he said about the slaves. So as far as he's concerned, participants in the transatlantic slave trade will be put to death. And nearly 100 years later, they tried to change that ordinance that it only applies for white people. They tried to change it up. Now, about Queen Anne. Now check this out. More things about Queen Anne. And I must tell you that I abhor the principles of the Church of Rome as much as it is possible for any to do it. And I as much value the doctrine of the Church of England. And certainly there is the greatest reason in the world to do so. For the doctrine of the Church of Rome is wicked and dangerous and directly contrary to the scriptures and their ceremonies, most of them plain downright idolatry. Now we're going to be reading this here. Hold the source, the 1700s. It says here, a plea for Scotland. Now you remember the Scotland Church and the England Church were connected. Now we're going to be reading this here, and this is during the reign of Queen Anne. This is an act during the reign of Queen Anne, and it says, and one way to fear him and keep his commandments always, that so our gracious God will dwell in our land, and that it may be well with us and our prosperity after us. The above written warning. This is Queen Anne's bounty. Now we just saw that they keep the commandments at that church. Now check this out about Queen Anne's bounty. It says here, Feast of First Fruits. First fruits. That's what it's referring to, the feast. It says first fruits, the first year's income, the 1/10 of that income, which is originally payable by every benefice. So now we're going to be reading from this guy right here, 1657. In a letter to Queen Anne, in response to her warning that the people should keep the commandments, they lose their interest with the people, and the next revolution will conclude presbytery and a commonwealth, for property wants numbers to establish itself. Though some of the members of that communion may have vanity enough to hope to establish it, and if the Church of England do not join in civil securities, nay, if there should be a restoration without them, those Catholics, though it will be to their certain ruin, may be able to do enough towards it to make the Church of England fall, and the Presbyterians get all in the scramble. So what he's saying here is that we should just submit to popery. And this is a plea that he's making to Queen Anne, dedicated to Queen Anne, that we need to just go to popery He's saying to Queen Anne, I know you're trying to hold on, but let's just go to popery. It's not going to be good for us. They won. They got it. We got to go to popery. This is the way to go. But Queen Anne was warning them that that's not the way, which she was right, because a lot of the kingdom did turn away. Some of the kingdom turned to Catholicism. And what happened after that, Queen Anne ended up being the last ruler. Now, we want to also address another important subject, which is the Book of Enoch. Why isn't it in the Bible? Which a lot of people wonder. There's a lot of theories as to why. Well, let's deal with the actual history and let's discover the reason why it's not in the Bible. So this is a man named John Dee. I recommend you check out this source. What it really goes into is John Dee using white magic, still witchcraft, but he's able to convince people that it's okay. King James wasn't going for it. Why? Because a lot of the people in his kingdom were turning to witchcraft, and they were using the Book of Enoch. It's called Enochian magic. Okay, and there's a lot of different things that John Dee did because of that. Now, let's think wisely. Do you think that the people in King James' time, since they were using Enochian magic, using it for witchcraft, were wise enough to take the Book of Enoch and understand the thing? Would you say that they were wise enough to take it, or become rigid and fall off? Well, let's see what the Bible says, because this exact same example is in the Bible. This is 2 Esdras 14:45. And it says, and it came to pass when the 40 days were fulfilled, that the highest spake, saying, the first that thou hast written, publish openly, that the worthy and unworthy may read it. But keep the 70 last, that thou mayest deliver them only to such as be wise among the people. The people who are wise and who could handle that. Clearly those people couldn't handle the Book of Enoch because they turned to witchcraft. And this is the reason why the Book of Enoch would not be in the Bible. It's based off scripture. They couldn't handle it. It's pretty obvious. It's actually biblical. So you may have heard the term keep the commandments. Yet when you think about it, there are commands all around us. There are commands that are given within your body to keep your heart beating and to keep you breathing. And those commandments are obeyed. So now your heart is beating. So now you're breathing for that organism, and that organism alive, that is you. Within the Bible, the nation of Israel is spoken of as a single person, sometimes divided into two, and a lot of times in one single person, and the bride of Christ. So there are commands that are given and that we are to follow. We're to follow the word. The word is Yahushai, and we're to keep his commands, to keep that heart beating, right? Those are the commands that keep the organism that is us alive. Ecclesiasticus 19:19. The knowledge of the commandments of the Lord is the doctrine of life. So let's look to the true God of our ancestors, Yah, in the name of his only begotten Son, Yahushai. Shalom.